Welcome to the How of Business with your host, Henry Lopez, the podcast that helps you start, run, and grow your small business. And now, here is your host.
Welcome to this episode of the How of Business. This is Henry Lopez, and joining me again is my friend and repeat guest. I don't even know. I think I got to get you one of those 5 or more visits jackets, but Giuseppe Grammatico, the franchise guide. Welcome back on the show.
Thanks, Henry. Yeah, I gotta get you a robe as well. The SNL robe.
There you go.
Look into.
Because of budget cuts, I'm going with just a pin, so I'll get you a little lapel pin if that's okay.
All right. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
That's all I can afford.
That's a great idea.
So you can find all of the resources, including previous episodes that Giuseppe has been on. He's my trusted partner for everything franchises. You can find that show notes page for this episode. Any links that we talk about will be there. And to find out more about my one-on-one and group coaching programs, just visit thehowofbusiness.com. Also to invite you to consider joining my community, my How of Business community on Patreon. And please subscribe wherever you might be listening so you don't miss any new episodes. Let me tell you a little bit more about Giuseppe, and then we'll get into the conversation. And this conversation is going to be about 2026 franchise trends and whatever other tangent we go off on, because we like to talk business. But Giuseppe Grammatico is a franchise veteran, a coach, an author, a speaker, and a consultant who simplifies the process of franchising and excels at guiding his candidates, as he calls them, people who are fit, his clients, to the business model that best suits their desired lifestyle. And that's a big part of it. His greatest joy is in helping people realize the American dream and sharing the freedom that comes with franchising, which we were just chatting about those very things before we started recording. Giuseppe Grammatico, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Henry. It's a pleasure, and it's an honor to be asked to come back on. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Giuseppe and I have known each other for a number of years, and he's been a guest on a number of topics related to franchising. And then there was a couple years ago when I was exploring a franchise and he helped me with that. I decided not to move forward with it, but he was my franchise consultant through that process. So he's who I recommend you to if you're considering a franchise. We'll get more into it, but it's important. I think a lot of people still don't understand that engaging somebody like you doesn't cost them anything more, because you get paid by the franchisor if and when I buy a franchise through you. But you represent me from my perspective. You're not biased for trying to get me to buy a particular franchise. You are in it to help me find the right fit, right?
That's it. Is a franchise a good fit for Henry? And what does that ideal franchise look like? That's it. Those are the 2 things that we're accomplishing with tons of education, on those phone calls as well.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about that, but let's get into the topic at hand here, what we wanted to focus on here in the new year. And if you're not listening at the beginning of 2026, it doesn't matter. This is still relevant, but we've had these conversations every couple of years. What's trending? What's happening? And you go, I think, at least once a year to your big conference for the group that you're a part of, right? Tell us a little bit about what that event is.
Yeah. So every it's actually 6 months. So twice a year, we meet with over 125 franchise companies. We have a lot of founders, a lot of CEOs and presidents attending the meetings. There's a lot of my colleagues, other franchise consultants, funding companies, some heavy hitters in the franchise space. And we meet for a week. We talk about best practices. We talk about trends in the franchise world. We talk about what's working. What are franchisors doing to make their franchisees more money, utilizing AI, economies of scale, and things like that. So it's great to really sit down and figure out what's going on in the space, updates on specific brands. And I like to share my findings in those conversations with all the families that I work with. So it's really beneficial and really puts my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the franchise world.
Excellent. Yeah, it's such a great opportunity. So tell us, what are some of those things that you came away with at a summary level? What are some of those trends or observations that you are seeing here in this year?
Yeah, so the big topic, usually have 5 major takeaways, and there's definitely subtopics here, but the one major thing, because only so many things could change, right? It's what's changing. It's maybe taking on more AI and investing there, but the thing I saw, I guess, predominantly was support. Support was the increase of support for the franchise owners. We heard stories of franchise companies really sitting back and talking one-on-one with each and every one of their franchisees to figure out where they can improve. So we talked about things such as where to implement AI via, for example, a call center to reduce their expenses. So we heard a story of AI being able to handle 250 calls simultaneously at the very same time, and having two individuals manage the call center, manage the AI call center, basically still taking calls, but needing less manpower. And what happened there was you increase call volume,
Capacity,
efficiency,
yeah.
but that also came at a savings for the
Right.
franchise owner, and
Which
they
is which
saved
is a huge part of it. Yes. So that savings opportunity.
big savings there. And by the way, those call centers are now open 24/7 because of that. Support was big in the coaching, not just offering coaching when you initially start and virtual coaching, but again, this is going to vary based off the brand. But we saw a lot of
Right.
brands switch up, and now their coaches are coming back even after launch to travel with the franchise owner, figure out, where exactly the issues lie, the bottlenecks. Because in some cases, you had a franchise owner complain about lead flow and marketing when it wasn't the lead flow and marketing. It was more of the closing ratio was a lot lower than the average franchise owner, which is another benefit of a franchise, is that you can
Absolutely.
compare
You have
yourself
that
with other
benchmark. That's huge. Yeah.
certain right. So if you're at a 20% close ratio and the top guy is at 50, there's 30% in the middle there that you can improve on.
Yeah, you may
So,
have plenty of leads. And so instead of piling on more money there, let's get better at how we're pitching our services or product, right?
and it can be right, simply like maybe you're going off script or the framework. So, but going and traveling in the field, one-on-one, talking with the customer, listening to what they say, making sure the follow-up is there and everything they learned in training. So it's more just as a follow-through, making sure that everything is being implemented from the training. We had talked with a company in the past that paused their franchise development.
Mm,
Now you're
wow.
thinking, well, how is that a positive?
Mm,
It's a positive because
mm-hmm,
in this one case, and I'm not going to name names, but the
mm,
brand realized that there were a lot of new franchise owners, and some were struggling
yeah.
and some were doing well. What was missing? So they decided to pause development for 6 months. Actually, it was actually close to a year,
Wow.
and figure out exactly where they can improve. And they doubled down the training to make sure all their franchise owners were getting up and running before bringing on any additional franchise owners. So there was a lot there. National accounts was another big takeaway where the system was great, but where can they improve and help the franchisee? And national accounts came into play. We heard stories of national accounts accounting for 10, even 20% of a franchisee's total volume for that year. Not profitability, but we're just talking top line revenue, because they were able to service these national brands, whether it be
Hmm.
painting, whether it be cleaning, because
Right.
it fell in a specific territory. So it wasn't reinventing the widget, it wasn't reinventing the franchise, but it was more of where can we improve on what we have, and review those numbers to make the franchisee not just increase top line sales, but just overall profitability, and systematize as much as possible. So
Yeah.
support was the major thing they talked about, and it was nice to hear, because that's
Yeah.
why you buy a franchise. It's for the support.
Correct. Just to expand on that a little bit, it's interesting. A lot of people that come to me for coaching would think, well, I have a franchise, so I'll get the support I need from the franchisor. Well, not necessarily. I have several clients that are franchise owners, and I won't name those franchises. And it's not because they're not necessarily getting support, but it's a different kind of support sometimes. But what I've observed with franchises is that most of them, certainly the ones that you represent, are very good at that initial startup phase, right? Helping you with the site selection, and helping you then with the build out, and helping
Right.
you with getting ramped up. But then where I think I see sometimes the gap is in that ongoing support after that startup, right? It tends to be more focused on, here are the numbers, here's the top line goal, instead of the more invested support and coaching, which is, let's look at your operations and see what's going on there.
Right.
A lot of franchises simply don't have the depth of coaches to be able to offer that, right? Understandably. That's why it's admirable that the franchise you're alluding to stopped, because they needed to catch up with how many franchisees they had. So that's something I think that as you look at a franchise, I think that's one of the things that should come out, hopefully, as you talk to other existing franchise owners, particularly those that have been at it for a year or more, right? That's not the ones that just signed, but the ones that have been at it, because that is so critical. You need that ongoing support from your franchisor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Validation, we call it, is equally as important as speaking with the franchisor. And to
Hmm.
your point, those individuals that have been in business for a year, because you want to know what their experience has been. When you're not every franchise, so don't look at franchising. If you're looking at the roofing business, don't think all franchises in the roofing businesses are set up the same.
No.
Some will have W-2 labor, some will have 1099, some will do the marketing for you, some will not. So make sure to ask specifically, what is included support wise, and what does the support team look like? You got all this great stuff, but if there's one coach assigned to 50 franchise owners, that's a red flag.
And I've seen that often. I've owned some of those franchises where that's the challenge, right? And I think Giuseppe, I would say that's probably the old model. That was not uncommon when I have owned franchises in the past. That wasn't uncommon.
Yeah, it's from the feedback from the franchisee, they had to change up their models, right? Are they the franchise company? Let's call it what it is. The franchise business model is a way of expanding nationally.
That's right.
The brand, right? Brand recognition growing throughout the country. But where do they make their money? And the myth is that they make money on when you buy the franchise, and a lot of that money is being reinvested back into the business. It's the royalty. There needs to be enough there to reinvest back in the business, but also to make a profit. So when people say, well,
and so that they can continue to add more franchisees, right? So I mean, that's critical.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, the team, they're adding national accounts. That's on the dime of the franchisor. You may be paying in a marketing fund, but they're adding these additional individuals. They're doing market research. So you want to talk, not just with the brand, but the franchisees, to make sure they're getting the support. Sometimes the franchisor is open and honest. I've had franchisors say, we are a 1 to 10 relationship. For every 10 franchisees, you get one coach, and they travel with you. They're always available via call or email. And then once we add another 10 franchisees, we bring on another coach, and that's how
impressive.
We don't overwhelm the coach. Some will get into those numbers, but ultimately, equally as important as those numbers is the feedback from the franchise owners. And
that speaks to then, when people always tell me, well, how do you keep paying this royalty forever? Well, you should be getting value for that. Lots of things that you get in return value from that, contributing to the marketing fund. And this should be one of those things. That support from the franchisor is what I need to look at to justify that ongoing royalty. In part, that's the only thing you're paying for, but that should be there to justify that royalty.
Correct. What is the royalty? What's included? What am I getting for that, both initially and going forward? So, and you're paying this for 5-10% is typically the average range.
In that range, yeah.
So you're paying that. You know to price that in when you're figuring out your margins and what you can make in the business, but also figure out, okay, because the franchisor is offering X, Y, and Z, I don't need an office. The call center, everything is being outsourced. So you are going to also be saving money.
Absolutely.
So factor that all in when you're running your pro forma to make sure you have a good understanding of what you're going to be netting on that business.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before. Maybe you and I have talked about it. The call center, going back to that example, when my cousin and I were searching for a franchise for executive suites, shared office space, one of the reasons we selected the franchisor that we did was because they offered that call center. There's no way, because I've built businesses on my own from scratch, and I've had franchises. It just depends on the situation and what makes best sense. But there's no way, as Henry and Eddie's shared office space, that we could have built a call center. We just we wouldn't be able to justify that. But by tapping into a leverage model, a franchise, and there's a fee, but it's a heck of a lot less than if we were doing it on our own. We're able to take advantage of that service. And now that it's being augmented by AI, even more so. But that's something that the franchisor has developed, put together, manages, oversees. We just benefit. We plug into it and benefit from it.
That's it. I mean, you're going to be saving so much money there. And ultimately, there's going to be a lot of costs. There's going to be additional costs. You got the franchise fee. Obviously, you get the royalty, but in return, you're getting support.
Exactly.
But what I tell everyone is when you're looking at the financials, look at, figure out your break-even analysis. Creating that pro forma, exactly what those costs are. There's tons of benefits, obviously, with the franchise, and we could talk in a lot more detail. But ultimately, talking with the average franchisee, that's running it maybe full-time to start. Maybe some are running it part-time, semi-passive to start. What are they generating if you took an average on one territory or one location and figuring all that out? Because ultimately you want to know how much you can make and the number of locations and or the number of territories needed to get you to the number you need to be at. So that's what I challenge everyone. You got all these expenses and you're going to put together a couple pro formas, but ultimately, what can you generate? What can you expect to generate? Franchisor can't tell you that, right? They can
No.
give you statistics, but you'll get that information speaking with the individual franchise owners.
Makes sense. All right. So speaking of trends, specific segments or industries that continue to be, we'll just say hot or interesting for various reasons. What do you see there?
Yeah, a lot of interest, and this isn't something going away in senior care, both medical and non-medical. We can't stop aging. Maybe we could stop looking like we're aging, but you can't stop aging. So really going after the 65 to 75-year-old communities.
Let me just ask you about that because my concern there, it seems to me like you got to be careful because there are some segments that in my observation are saturated. Am I wrong about that or what's your thought there?
Saturation, I mean,
Meaning there's so many people serving it in some markets. And so I've got competition like crazy for that same segment of service, right? There's all different
right.
segments of that. When we say home care, that means a lot of different things. But what are your thoughts there as to whether you do see some saturation or not?
I think there's a lot of competition. I wouldn't say saturation.
Fair.
With that competition, there's different types. So where we're seeing a lot in senior care, it's in-home senior care versus going to, referring to a
Yeah.
facility for mom and
Right.
dad.
Right.
And there's franchises for both, by the way. But in-home where, people want to age at home, they want to, their final years be comfortable at home, not necessarily in a facility. There's definitely a lot of competition there. I think there are a few companies that really stand out and do it well. We have a story of a franchise company in the Philly market. The individual is actually semi-retired, and both his grandparents died unexpectedly by just lack of care. Someone was watching, was on their phone.
Terrible.
Grandmother fell in the restroom. So, easily distracted, not properly trained. So they said, how can we improve this? And one of the things they did was, we're going to give every client an iPad, strip out all the apps, and it's going to be specifically for communication back and forth from the family so that we can say that, hey, mom and dad fell today. They didn't eat lunch. They were complaining about their leg,
Hmm.
and being able to send video, audio back and forth and really kind of, take notes on everything that happened for the day. The
Hmm.
training, the communication's big, not just writing on a post-it note that gets lost, but I
Right.
think they do it in different ways so that number one, they're training their caretakers, but also there's this backup system to where that caretaker can't make it. We're human. You got into a car accident, you're not feeling well. There is this automation to find that replacement immediately
I
versus
see.
having to scramble. So I think there's a lot of competitors, but I feel like there's a few standouts that really go over and beyond to take care of mom and dad.
And what I'm hearing there is that one of the ways some of these franchisors and businesses are standing out is by applying technology. Like immediately as you were describing that, I can envision that these companies will continue to develop how they're leveraging AI. It could be that if you don't check in on that iPad and it doesn't see your face with all the technologies available and your face isn't alive, that it could automatically send a signal. So all of those technologies, it sounds like they're starting to layer in to improve that standard of care.
It is. We heard the term multiple times. I mean, probably a dozen times that you can run your entire business off your phone or tablet. I mean,
Mhm.
it's absolutely amazing. Reducing the need. Senior care, you do need an office, but for a lot of home service brands, you don't even need
You
an
don't.
office.
Right,
You could
right,
run it from home because the contractor, the employee is going to the homeowner.
right.
But with senior care, they literally give you that iPad. They're saying we're designating an iPad
Okay.
as part of
Yeah.
our service and all the communication, which keeps track of the hours, keeps track of the billing, the account receivable, everything is at the fingertips. And there's even brands that took it to the next level and said, well, what about if caretakers, the car breaks down or they don't drive? And they've added this element of transportation, almost like an Uber service to
For
supply the
the caretaker.
transportation for the caretaker to get to the homeowner because maybe they don't have a vehicle
Yeah,
or
they don't have
just
reliable transportation or they depend on mass transit and they can't quite get to the particular residence. So they're addressing that issue that is one of the labor constraints sometimes.
yes, can we get there? Or maybe their morning routine is helping in one area of Florida, and then they have to
Mhm.
go visit another family in the afternoon, so they would have
Mhm.
that transportation taken care of. So I
Mhm.
think these are the things that really stand out. They also help with all the headaches with licensing, non-medical. It's going to be a much simpler model. But dealing with
But also
Medicare,
in
Medicaid,
non-medical, then you have a lower barrier to entry, which goes back to my point about increased competition. But
yes,
all right,
lower barrier of entry, yes.
exactly. Let's shift to home services. That continues to be another popular segment. Yes.
Absolutely. Home services has been exploding since COVID and it's not slowing down. A lot of brands out there offering lots of different services. Why? It's simply because individuals, families are still working from home. Some people are required to go back to the office. I have a family member we were just talking the other day, and he's going in a couple times a week, but 3 days a week he's still working from
Yeah,
home.
the
So
hybrid model seems to be still where a lot of people are, right?
correct.
If
Yep.
not exclusively home office.
We're hearing quite a bit of that. It's like check in for some meetings. Maybe the president's in town. We need you to come in, but for the most part, you can work from home.
The other thing that's got to be influencing it is, of course, because of economic conditions, interest rates, people are staying in their homes. And so then instead of buying a new home, I want to improve my home. That's also driving it, I suspect.
It is. And the real estate market, it's been great. We've seen our home values increase. I'm sure yours have as well. So a lot of equity in the home. So what do we do with that equity?
Improve a home, yeah.
You could buy a
Because while
franchise.
you could have some appreciation, it still doesn't make sense to buy in somewhere else because you have a lower interest rate probably that you're holding on to. So you're staying put, reinvesting that money that you have in equity into the current home.
Yes, I was looking at our rates, 30-year mortgage, 3.25%. You're not going to find that anywhere. So
No.
we're locked in. We've paid most of the interest at this point and the amortization schedule there. But yeah, there's equity in there. So how do we improve the home? Do we move? We're going to be hit with a higher interest rate. I'm in New Jersey. I think there's also extra taxes once you hit certain levels. So it's much easier to stay home and improve the home. I'm in the home longer. You're starting to see some of the imperfections and things like that, or using multi-use. I need more of an office environment.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to do a sound barrier on one side of the wall, or what have you, depending on your environment. So,
Mm-hmm.
so between the equity, having access to that money, working from home, we're seeing that it's not going away. With technology and efficiencies, people are still they're strapped for time. They're just not enough time in the day, so they're getting their homes clean. They're getting the siding power washed. If they don't want to replace the siding, there are
Right.
services out there, believe it or not, actually in your neck of the woods that
Mm-hmm.
will paint the siding. You can
Right,
actually restore
right.
the siding.
Refurbish or get more life out of the existing siding. There's
It's
technology for that for roofs. There's all kinds of opportunities there. A segment that has always been interesting to me, and you represent, I think, several brands on this, is cleaning and restoration, right? Because that now falls, and especially that covers a broad range.
right.
But it could be restoration because something has happened, like water damage or an accident or something else. And what I like about that segment is now it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have.
Need to have. It's not a want, it's a need, and that's exactly it. It's when I think of restoration, I think of was it Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. These are dirty businesses. They're not sexy businesses where you're going in, and for the most part, if you look at where most of that business, that 80-20 rule, it's water and smoke damage.
Yeah.
A fire, smoke damage, firefighters come in, leaky pipe. Yes, they get into specialty depending on the brand, disaster, hurricanes, and tornadoes and earthquakes,
Mm-hmm.
crime scene cleanup, biohazard. These are all subcategories, but a lot of it is smoke and water. And we had a nice stress test during COVID. We saw these businesses, they didn't miss a beat. There was water in that basement. That water needed to be extracted, or else now the foundation, you got mold issues, and now you got to worry about the home coming down, right? And having structural issues. So to the
Yeah,
foundation.
we have
So
the mold issue in Florida where I live as well, or storm damage or whatever the case might be. Or it could be, the water heater, which might be on the second floor or in the attic, and it creates damage. All of those kind of things can create damage. And what's great about this segment from a business owner's perspective, like you said it well, sometimes the best businesses are the not sexy businesses, right? Where you're willing to do the quote unquote dirty work, although it's not like it's you going out there necessarily and
correct.
cleaning the stuff, but you have staff to do that. But when a consumer is looking to buy that type of service, it is typically not a price-driven decision. It is a how quickly can you get out here type of decision.
correct.
And so if you can deliver on that, you have an opportunity to gain market share, right?
Absolutely. And, a lot of this work is being referred from plumbers. The homeowner calls the plumber because their feet were wet when they
Right.
woke up.
But that's the first, let's call a plumber. Yeah.
So they can shut off the water. Plumber figures out, okay, yes, I know where the issue is, but we got to extract this. And then they'll refer someone to do the restoration. So it's a huge, it's in demand. A lot of companies are in that similar space. You need to make sure to have some type of financing locked in because you're working with insurance companies. They probably won't pay for a month or two.
I see.
So, but you're paying your staff, so you have to figure out what this, either it's a line of credit or figuring out how to pay your staff because you're going to be paying them before the insurance pays out. But great business. You're very few employees. You're charging obviously that premium,
A premium.
and that franchisor is going to be feeding you with those national accounts. They're going to be getting you up and running, working and getting you licensed in your state, insured and bonded. So every state, Florida, one example, California, where you're going to have to get some type of contractor's license or utilize someone on the team that has a contractor's license. So there's additional moving parts, but they'll work with you to figure out that process of getting up and running and what that looks like. So yeah, there's some great
And in that
there.
segment, Giuseppe, have you seen that I can start with one man in a truck? That's possible, or what have you seen there?
In restoration, depending how you're running it. So if you're able to leave your job and run it full time, we're seeing models where you have a full time sales rep, and that sales rep is really working with the plumbers and plumbing supply companies and small insurance companies, and one or two technicians. Maybe they're hourly. So we'll call it you the owner running it full time, one sales and one or two technicians.
Got it. And maybe one or two vehicles is what I'm hearing. Yeah.
One vehicle to start. You get one or two techs on there. Once you grow out of that, you just again another van into individuals.
Yeah. I love that you've highlighted the salesperson or the business development person, because I think that is often a mistake that small business owners make. Unless they know they're good at that, they have experience. That's what typically doesn't happen. And then they wonder why the business hasn't come. Yeah, you're going to have support from your franchisor, but you got to go get that business. And if that's not you, then you need to hire somebody to help you go get the business, right? Develop those relationships, get into the community, develop those contacts, do the networking, do the outbound marketing. And I'm glad that you mentioned that role being critical to even a small 2 or 3 person startup like that.
Yeah, it's crucial. And keep in mind, restoration is B2B. You're not putting out big ads and customers are calling you. You're getting those referrals. The reoccurring aspect of these businesses is you're getting referrals from the insurance companies, from the plumbers. When you switch to more B2C, where you're offering a cleaning service, roofing,
right.
and things
That's
like
a
that.
different segment. Yeah.
That's the turnkey marketing we were talking about with the call center. So it's a little bit different of a sales process. They both work. You still need salespeople, but it's just a different approach. So that person in restoration needs to be great at networking and developing relationships at the Chamber of Commerce, at the plumbing supply, and really just increasing the relationship and staying in touch with everyone.
Agreed. All right, let's shift a little bit. What have you seen, maybe not necessarily this year, but over the last couple of years, as far as what a franchisor is looking for in an ideal franchisee? The person who's looking to get a franchise. Or have you seen any trends there, or things that have emerged or changed as to what's an ideal avatar or an ideal franchisee and what that looks like?
Yeah, so kind of what we were talking about, I wouldn't say there's necessarily trends, but I want to talk about the process and why there could be change. So especially an emerging brand new, they're still figuring things out, who's going to do well. And it's part of it is the skill set and the support offering, what that franchise company is offering. So in an emerging brand, they may say, yes, you have to be full-time in the business and you need to be great at networking. As they bring on their first 10 franchisees, they realize, what, this business, we do have some additional resources. It can be run semi-passive. You can keep your job. And now they change slightly the avatar while still, mentioning you still have to be good at networking. So what you will see is that not that the franchisor changed their mind, is that the franchisor will evolve. They'll see who has done well in their system, and you can't compare two painting companies side by side. It's, one painting company may offer you marketing and bookkeeping services, the other may not. So specifically for that brand. So you'll see this kind of evolve. You have to be full-time. Now you can be part-time, but typically once you get past those 10 new franchise owners, you get to the 50 franchisee mark. Now it's pretty clear this is who we need. And it's not more of who the avatar is. We want to make sure that we want you to go a little bit more aggressive on the marketing, so that the avatar doesn't change, but they may increase their financial requirements because they want you to make sure you go very aggressive on the marketing the first year. So maybe they increase their net worth and liquidity requirements. Maybe they increase their item 7, their investment, their itemized investment to start, because they want you to be a little bit more aggressive. So the avatar doesn't necessarily change, but some of the tweaks within the financials, we've seen that for more of the established brands.
Okay. I want to mention an episode you and I did, I think it was last year, episode 485. On that episode, Giuseppe and I talked about a franchise side hustle because, as you're mentioning, there are franchises that require you to be full-time involved in the business, but there are other franchises that very much support and welcome people who are going to maybe keep their corporate job and own a franchise on the side. So
Right.
there are opportunities there for both approaches, both models. And that's one of the things, again, that a franchise consultant like Giuseppe can help you navigate what makes better sense for you. But the point is that the only option is not that you got to leave your job and go start a franchise. There are other options if what you're looking for is to augment your income or start preparing yourself for leaving the corporate world at some time, or maybe you're perfectly happy in the corporate world, but you're just looking to diversify your income streams. There are opportunities there. So I encourage you to listen to episode 485 if that's where you're thinking. Just to expand on this, and then we'll wrap it up here, the skill sets that you see generally as you work with potential franchisees, as you now over the years have helped people buy and invest in franchise, what are some of the skills that you think do translate either from my corporate world or that you've seen that the people who do well, they have these skills or personality traits?
Yeah, that's a great question. You have to be coachable. If you are not coachable, it's going to be difficult, because that's what a franchise is. Essentially your coach. They're going to be coaching you. They're going to be your guide throughout the entire process. They're going to be aiding you. They're going to be giving you feedback in areas of improvement. So coachability is big, and being able to follow a process. Some people say, yes, we are able to follow a process. I'll be working with them. Yep, I'm coachable. We can follow a process. And yet on the first call, they demand they want a list of franchise companies to contact. That is not our process, because I don't know what to refer to you, because I don't know enough about you, and we don't know what's available right in your market. So
Right. You're not even willing to follow my process. So right away,
right.
It's like when people sometimes, one of the things we used to do on an application is, follow these instructions, and we're seeing if you can follow those instructions, right? So similarly, you're showing me you not willing to follow a process. You think you have it. You think you know it all, right? And that was me, Giuseppe. That was me. Even though I started with my first business as a franchise, as I got more and more knowledgeable and arrogant, then for a while I was like, oh, I would never touch a franchise again. I don't want the restrictions. I don't want somebody telling me how to do it. If I want to add a menu item or a service item, I want to do it. I want to do it my way. And then as I got even more mature, I realized, wait a second, there's benefits here. So it just depends. It depends for me as a seasoned entrepreneur now. And as I mentioned already, most recently I invested. I'm a minority partner in a franchise. So I've come full circle in understanding that. But I think this is a key thing, that if you come to it thinking, yeah, I'll listen to all of that, but then I'm going to do it my way, that's sure set failure as a franchisee. Yeah? Or it's more likely to fail than not.
And maybe a franchise, and that's part of our intro call, right? Our
That's
20
right.
minutes.
It's not for you right now. Yeah.
It's not for you. And I'm going to tell you that. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you it's not a good fit, or you may want to change your way of thinking. When it comes to skills, this is actually a really good topic, because a lot of people think you need experience. I need to work in a pizzeria to own a pizza franchise. I need to be in restoration to own a restoration franchise. And I would say 95%, if not higher, you don't need any experience. But what you do need, because the franchisor will train you, is you need soft skills. You need a transferable skill set. So I'm working with someone right now who's an attorney. Where can we place someone that was an attorney? Well, the legal end doesn't really help me much, but what are you good at? And this person was great at networking. That's how he grew his business. He enjoyed that part. So
and that's not necessarily the case with every attorney. Some attorneys love just sitting at their desk and cranking out content, writing legal briefs, or that's what.
Correct.
But this person has that skill set, that soft skill, as you had labeled it, that is very transferable to a small business.
Correct. So yeah, right. So the attorney, they have the hard skills, the legal part, and then the soft skills is what's transferable, and that's can work in any environment. And that was the networking and sales. So he's looking at a restoration business. He's wanting to be the mayor of the town, get out into the community, work with the chamber.
Huge. That'll be a huge advantage for him, right?
It's huge. But on the flip side, another attorney who I have worked with, to your point, loved working on the legal documents. He was a partner of a firm. He was going to be selling it. But I said, well, what are you good at? And we dug a little bit deeper. And he was big into, if you looked at his career, management. He loved, bringing on new talent and the junior attorneys or people that were studying for the bar and networking with them. So we're looking at a cleaning business. Why? A cleaning business is looking for someone with management experience because you will have a bigger team. You're only charging, cleaning is basic by man hour. So you have larger teams, you're charging so much per hour. So we're looking at a cleaning business, the complete opposite. Purely, we're talking office cleaning, and because we can leverage his skill set there. So we look at things like that to make sure that the skills align, but you don't need experience in the industry. I was on Wall Street and I got into building services. What was the correlation? None, aside from my work in a building. So what do we look at?
And I mean, you also brought to it your work ethic and your ability to learn and all of those other soft skills, your communication skills, all of those also transfer. But it's interesting because, you and I have talked about this before. What I have found, having been a franchisee, is that often franchisees would rather you come with no experience because you don't bring bad habits.
Yes.
Or you're not so sure that, this is the way you do it, right?
It's, the example I give is, you're a roofer and you buy a roofing franchise. Totally cool. That's great. You don't need the experience. Yeah. But the franchisor is going to at first say, okay, we need to make sure you understand that your role is to really network and grow and find the roofers, which are primarily 1099 contractors. Because if you're going to get into, I'm just going to go on the roof to save a few bucks. Yes, your margin on that roof will be greater because you did the roof yourself. But there's always this trade-off. What was the opportunity cost loss? Yeah. Well, you could have went to 5 networking events at the same time you had finished that roof. So they will challenge you to say, yes, you have the experience, which is technically not a positive. It's not a negative. It's kind of in between. But
it's a matter of how you leverage it. But yeah, if what you're looking for is your own job, then that's, then maybe you should be looking to set up your own shop, right? The idea of a business generally is to scale beyond what we can deliver one-on-one.
Right.
And that's got to be part of your mentality as well that you bring to it. Okay, great. Let's start to wrap it up here and talk about, if I am interested in considering a franchise, how do I engage you? When do I engage you? How do you help me with that process?
If you have I'll keep it very simple. If you have any interest in owning a business, owning a franchise, which is not all fast food as most people think of franchising, set up a call. You go to my website, GG, the franchise guide. You book a call. It's free. It's 20 minutes. I'm going to save you tens, if not hundreds of hours of research, figuring out step number 1, is a franchise a good fit for me? And equally as important, if it is, do I qualify? We need to make sure your financials, your credit score, everything lines up to make sure that you're a good fit, or if the timing is maybe later on. I'll save you a lot of headaches. People start looking at brands, getting excited to find out it's sold in the market. They don't qualify. So we will figure out on a 20-minute call if we're a good fit and if franchising is a good fit. If it is, we'll send you some additional information, then we'll schedule a second call. That's the deep dive. That's where the magic happens. 60 minutes. We're going to go through what your ideal business looks like. Again, we're working in reverse. Your skill sets that we just talked about, full-time, part-time, where you're located, your investment range, what you can actually afford. Do you prefer brick and mortar or something home-based? And there's 20 other areas we look at. So we're going to get very specific, not to what's out there, but let's figure out the ideal business. Then when we have our third call, then we go into the market to see what is available in your market that checks off not some, but all the boxes.
So there's what are the matches here for you to now we take it to that next round of, okay, now you hold my hand help me through the process of analyzing these options. Yeah.
That's it. And we put it all together. So it's a series of 2 calls up front. We look for the match. We cover funding and what if your ideal business looks like. By call 3, we start looking at brands and we introduce you. We literally introduce you to a brand and you'll get a call or email within 24 business hours. Try contacting a franchise directly that doesn't have the relationship. The feedback I get is about 80% of the time we get an automatic reply, and that's it. If we get a reply.
Well, because they know that those are unqualified interested parties, and so they got to manage their time as well, right? They're wanting to talk to people who are qualified and ready and are a fit. and then walk them through the process of analyzing, in fact, if it is. I think the other misconception, Giuseppe, people have as to what it costs them to engage you.
Yep, the cost is free. We're paid directly from the franchise companies, a referral fee, just like a real estate agent, just like an executive recruiter. It does not affect your investment whatsoever. What you do get is my 20 years of franchise and business ownership experience, and we apply that to find your perfect fit.
Yeah, you're not going to get a discount if you go directly to the franchisor and cut out. And Giuseppe's not a middleman. This is how franchisors, in part, bring their offering to market. Is they leverage this model of a consultant like Giuseppe to find the right fits for their brands. So it's not a matter of I can cut him out and save money, or I got to pay him to So it's a no-brainer, really. I just think that a lot of people, I would venture most people, don't understand how it works.
It's a franchise. Let's put it this way. Everyone has to be treated the same. So
that's right.
Franchise fees and royalties cannot be changed.
There are laws that apply here they cannot play with. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. You also have a podcast. So tell us briefly about that and where we can find and listen to your podcast.
Yep. So the podcast is Franchise Freedom. We have my good friend Henry who will be on the show here in the next couple of weeks. So looking forward to that. And we have about 270 episodes covering just about every topic. There's a search bar. So Exit Strategy with David C. Barnett is on there. We're meeting with Rocky. We're going to be working on a future podcast, Lavania from Profit First, talking about cash flow and paying yourself. Henry Lopez and business coaching and how to make your business more efficient and amongst other ideas. So any topic you can think of, you'll find. And that's my challenge to you. If you don't see that topic, send me an email. There's a contact button on my website and send me that topic and I'll definitely cover that for you. Mm-hmm. But Franchise Freedom is the podcast. If you're more of a reader, my book, I kept it original, Franchise Freedom as well. My manifesto is as the copywriter created. Short 30-minute read. It's on my website as well. And it's my exact blueprint, 48 pages of exactly how to go about finding your own perfect franchise. We obviously bring a lot more value and dive a lot deeper. But if you need just an idea, kind of an entry point, that book is a quick read. So podcast and book. But if you want to save that time and dive right in, you have nothing to lose aside from 20 minutes. Maybe a bad joke or two for me, and would love to help you out and point you in the right direction.
To be specific, yeah.
Yes, yes. We were going through a few before, but yes, I got plenty of them.
Exactly. Excellent. Thank you. Let's wrap it up. What's one thing you want us to take away from this conversation that we've had? I mean, it was broad ranging, but mostly it started with this the point of what you've learned about the trends that you're seeing in 2026 in franchising. But what do you want us to take away from this conversation?
That, business ownership, I think it's getting more and more difficult, with AI, how to utilize it, the costs involved. Why not? If you're looking to really create the safety net for your job, you're in technology and you're anticipating another layoff. Why not create this semi-passive side hustle to protect yourself for that layoff in the event you were to lose your job? And what's going to make it a lot easier is that partner. You don't need a business partner. The franchise is your partner. So why not have a system pre-built for you that you can follow with the infrastructure, with the marketing, the call center, sometimes even the bookkeeping done for you? That's investing in AI to make the process much simpler. Mm-hmm. So I think you owe it to yourself to at least look into that. There's going to be a time commitment. This is not stock investing, fully passive. That doesn't exist in franchising. But if you have some time and you want to figure out when you're available, maybe get your financials in order and give me a call. We can figure it out. But you owe it to yourself to really create that safety net, especially if your job, you may be downsized at some point or anticipate losing a job. Reach out to me. We'll put together a plan and see if franchising is a good fit.
Excellent. Excellent. Great takeaway. And thanks again, Giuseppe, for being back on the show and sharing all this knowledge and information. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun. I really appreciate it. Would love to help. And everything is on the website, the podcast, the book. You could book a call. We just updated the site, a lot cleaner, a lot faster. So any feedback, any topics you would like for me to cover, if it's something personal, or just give me a call. Even there's no silly questions. If you just have a general question and you don't anticipate being able to buy a franchise for a decade, more than glad. I just spoke with a couple of college students that were putting together ideas, the next 5 to 10 years, and we walked through some options and things to prepare for. More more than glad to help for anyone that has any questions.
Wonderful. And on the show notes page for this episode at thehowofbusiness.com, I'll have all of the links that Giuseppe mentioned in case you're somewhere where you're listening where you can't write that down. Just go to thehowofbusiness.com. Either search for the franchise guide or Giuseppe, or go to this episode and you'll find it all there. You can also find all of the other previous episodes, like I mentioned, the one on side hustles that Giuseppe and I discussed. There'll be a link there for that episode as well. This is Henry Lopez, and thanks for joining me on this episode of The How of Business. My guest today again is Giuseppe Grammatico, the franchise guide. I release episodes every Monday morning. You can find the show everywhere you listen to podcasts, including the How of Business YouTube channel and my website, thehowofbusiness.com. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.